To the brave Jamfs who showed up for this late session, you are all in luck. It is happy hour. I will personally be bringing a round of margaritas to you, courtesy of the Jamf party at 6:30 tonight. Okay? Yeah, thanks for hanging with us. I'd love to introduce you to one of my nearest and dearest at Jamf, my colleague, Dr. M, in collaboration with AWS, with Derek Root, who will be presenting to us on future-proofing K-12 with AWS, and then we get to happy hour, okay?
What a lead-in.
I know.
I think we've got to hurry.
I know, really. Standing between happy hour and this crew seems a little dangerous.
This is one of those, I mean, we're all educators here. We know this is like the after-school meeting. So we're going to get through this pretty quick.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Emily-Froese. I am a Senior Education Leadership Executive here at Jamf. And I'm excited to partner with Derek and AWS and hear more and learn from him. And hopefully share with you some new ideas and thoughts.
Yeah. And before I jump in, I just want to kind of, not that there's many of us in the room, but does anybody here want to brave what they think the cloud actually is and what the cloud means? I can pick somebody since there's such a small number of you. I'll just be like, you. No, but does anybody want to say what they think their impression of the cloud is? Anyone? Okay, well, I'll just jump in then. So our definition of the cloud is cloud computing is on demand of IT assets delivered via the internet in a pay-as-you-go pricing model, right? So it's really that simple. It's the electricity, it's the water. You're paying for this infrastructure, but you're not paying for it when you're not using it. And that's our AWS definition of the cloud. You'll probably hear other cloud providers say similar things to that, but that's our definition. My role is K-12 Business Development Manager for AWS. I've been here about 4 years. I'm a recovered K-12 CIO myself. I've been CIO in a couple of different K-12 districts. I'm a former Jamf customer. So I've done deployments of all kinds that you can imagine. So I'm very familiar with how things work. And I've been a Cloud Forward for quite a while and been a Jamf customer for quite a while. So really appreciative of you all being here. And I keep going the wrong direction with this clicker because I'm not used to it. Who builds on AWS? Anybody that's in ed tech will recognize a lot of these names that build on AWS. At last check, I think about 85% of the ed techs that everybody uses, think Instructure, think Jamf, build on AWS and use the AWS Cloud. On the other side of the screen there, you'll see a lot of districts that work with us directly. You'll see Houston ISD, you'll see Jeffco Public Schools, which is the other half of Denver that we're not in right now here. So you'll see a lot of different districts that build with AWS and build on AWS. And as we walk through this, I'm going to talk about a couple of reasons why. And this isn't meant to be just an AWS pitch. You know, I work for AWS, so obviously I would like you to use our services. But just to talk about what are the advantages of using the cloud, and then we'll get into a little bit of why Jamf Pro on the cloud is a really good idea. So agility, cost savings, elasticity, innovation, security, global footprint. Those are like the big reasons organizations choose the cloud. Now, K-12, some of these things maybe aren't as relevant as they are in other industries. So agility is really important for certain industries that are developing applications and really needing to move quickly and innovate quickly. In K-12, we don't necessarily have to move at that pace. So things like cost savings become more important. And as I said before, you only pay for what you use in the cloud. So it's really cost beneficial in a K-12 setting that's so cyclical. A great example is I have a customer in Atlanta, Georgia, and they have a bus routing application that's just massively horsepower intensive. And they over-provision for this thing in their district because they've got to have this horsepower twice a year when they're rerouting all their students. But the rest of the time, they've got these VMs and these servers sitting idle that cost them all this money. You build this in the cloud, you spin these up when you need them, and when you're not using them, you just shut them down, and they don't cost you a dime to sit there until the next 6 months go by. So cost savings is a big deal. Elasticity is becoming much more important in the K-12 industry, especially when you think about applications, again, that go through the elastic nature of the cyclical cycle of school districts, right? The beginning of the year, your food services, your bus routing, your SIS and registrations are getting crushed. Every 2 weeks or every month, depending on your pay cycles, your ERP is getting crushed, right? So you have to think about this elasticity. So the idea that you can scale up and scale back down again in the middle of this. Again, innovation is important in every industry, but Differentiators and infrastructure aren't necessarily the big things in K-12 that we talk about, but cybersecurity obviously is, right? Cybersecurity is super important, and we're going to dive into cybersecurity in a whole section here in a little bit just to talk about that. Then the global footprint is actually probably a negative in some ways to K-12. Most K-12s in the country and most states in the country have some sort of data residency requirements, and we'll get into how we meet those a little bit in the cloud as well too as we go forward. What that means in the big picture is AWS has been around for 18 years. If anybody knows how we got our start, anybody know how we got our start? There's a bunch of different stories around it out there. The most true one that I know of is Andy Jassy, who is our current CEO of Amazon, was running AWS, which was essentially Amazon's IT department. And he went to Jeff Bezos and said, look, I think other people might want to buy this stuff that we've got. We've got really inexpensive storage, we've got really good connectivity, and there's some computing that people might want to use. So they decided to launch AWS, and obviously that was 18 years ago. We've grown to 38 regions. I'll talk about what a region is in a minute. We have 300 plus security features that are available, which is a huge thing for everybody. The services have gone from your basic S3 simple storage and elastic compute to over 200 plus services now, covering everything from identity and access management to AI, everything in between you can think of. It's more efficient and cheaper from a global impact perspective to run in the cloud than running your own data centers. We've proven that over and over again. What am I missing? Price reductions. We're one of the few companies you'll find on the planet that actually seek to lower our prices. Every time we lower our prices, we find our customers buy more from AWS, so we absolutely look to lower prices. We've had 151 price reductions in 18 years, which is just an amazing thing. And then the software listings is where K-12, it's really important to K-12s, right? We have over 12,000 software listings. That number goes up and down, but it tends to hover in that space. And again, I said about 85% of the ed techs in the country run on AWS. Regions are made up of clusters of availability zones. This is how we get resiliency and reliability in our network. So we'll have a region, east, west, wherever it is. There's, again, 38 of them around the world. And within a region, there will be at least 2 availability zones, which are separated by enough distance to be resilient against weather and other types of impacts, but close enough that latency is practically 0 between the two. So the definition of a region is a cluster of availability zones. Obviously, most regions have more than just 2, but the minimum would be 2. A brand new region that opens in South Africa might only have 2 to start with, and then we'll expand that as we go forward. But again, in the US, the regions are much more robust than that. Our global infrastructure covers a little more territory. This is sort of a picture of what this side of the planet looks like from a regional and availability zone perspective. Telling you all this just to show the reliability that's built into the AWS network and why we're more reliable, more resilient than any other cloud provider. Talked about sustainability a little bit. Again, it's about 4.1 times more climate friendly to run in the cloud than it is to run your own data center. Anybody's ever built one, I've built several over the years, will know the climate impact and the power impact and the fuel and the air handling and all of that goes into it. When you use that shared space, you reduce your footprint in that space. And that's important to probably more and more K-12s these days. A lot of government entities, state and federal especially, have requirements on meeting certain climate reduction policies, where K-12's not so much, but it's happening more and more frequently. And then we can support just about any virtual workload you can think of. So application development, again, in the bigs, my last district was 150,000 students, and I had 20,000 employees, so we developed our own applications, right? We did a lot of that work. Yeah. But not everybody's fortunate enough to have an app development team, or unfortunate enough, depending on your point of view. End user computing is another piece, and that's where Jamf really comes into play. Like, we don't sell end user compute too much, but we do have spaces that we work in K-12 in like lab environments. Workspaces is a VDI solution. We've got AppStream that will let you stream any application to any device, anytime, again, in the pay-as-you-go. Contact center, we could do a whole session on. We've got virtual contact centers that have AI built right into them, can integrate with your help desk software or your food services applications and things. So those are all sort of ancillary. the real sweet spot for K-12 is in the middle, this analytics, generative AI, and machine learning. We're doing a ton of work in that space. And if you look at the bottom corner, databases are behind all that. If you don't have clean data and clean databases, AI and machine learning is practically impossible to pull off. You've got to have clean data and good data sets there. Analytics is super hot in K-12, mostly around student performance, but I think we could talk a lot about analytics in device deployment, device enrollment, device usage, losses, tracking. There's a lot going on there in analytics that I think may be an overlooked thing that as I was prepping for this with you, I hadn't really thought about analytics. It's always about student performance. Again, talked about databases. Serverless and containers and IoT, probably not so much in K-12 space today. Serverless means you can deploy code and run applications directly in the cloud without having a server behind it. That concept is a little tough for a lot of K-12s that haven't had a chance to even finish migrations to the cloud yet, and it's sort of like a 300 level cloud user, right? So, and then underneath of that, security and compliance, core services, we'll get into those in a minute, infrastructure, and the plethora of management tools we have to manage your cloud environment. We'll talk about all that a little bit going forward. The cloud adoption journey is something most people don't jump both feet into the deep end of the pool for. They take a path. And I was just telling Em a little while ago that I kind of equate this to the SAMR model. If you work with your educators a few years back, they had that substitution augmentation model that they did with students. If you think about the same type of model in the cloud adoption journey, you typically pick a project or an experiment that you want to do. You'll build a foundation around that thing. You'll migrate that thing. You'll modernize that thing. And then eventually you're going to redo that thing over and over and over again. So we'll talk about this a little bit more, but like resiliency is a very important thing that a lot of districts will do as a first step into the cloud, or even if it's just storage. Earlier today, I had a gentleman come by talking to me about storage, and for a very big district out in the West, they had a problem where they needed to store bus video. They had had an incident on a bus, and the video had been overwritten because it had been more than 30 days ago, and the board said, "Thou shalt keep bus video for 3 years."
30 days.
Yeah, and most people keep 30 days, you know. So they were freaking out about this, and the idea was we would ingest bus video data into our storage. It's called Glacier. It's a crazy inexpensive storage package, and we could keep that data there for very long periods of time at very low cost, knowing that they need to retrieve it. It might take a day to get it back, right? So that's kind of a first step in your cloud journey before you migrate your SIS or your ERP or Jamf into the cloud, maybe some of those simpler workloads to get used to it.
So all that video is stored in a cloud, not
Correct. Not on a spinning
closet.
disk somewhere, not in a closet,
Awesome.
on a DVD or DVR somewhere. And again, after 3 years, they start to overwrite it.
Right.
But it's in a worm methodology, and we'll talk about the worm, the read once, write once, read many methodology. And that's a good cybersecurity practice anyway. So it's a good way to roam with those things. Customer enablement. We have a couple different things here that I think are important to K-12. As AWS specialists and the vertical teams, I'm obviously living proof that we exist. There's a vertical team at AWS for just about anything you can think of. We have a justice and public safety team, and they'll work on things like police departments, fingerprint scanning, 911 call centers. We have a health and human services that will work with hospitals. We have a group that works specifically with R1 research institutions. Obviously, I'm the K-12 vertical. There's 4 of us, and 3 of us are former CIOs in the K-12 space. Charlotte, Mecklenburg, Portland Public Schools, and Rochester, places you would know. And we work with a lot of different organizations that cater to those things, Council of Great City Schools, COSIN, those types of organizations. Training and certs is a really important thing that we do. We've got a ton of free training and certifications, and we will do hands-on workshops with you. So as you're learning to get into the cloud and work with the cloud, the idea being you don't have to go it alone. You can come in with a training partner. AWS will help you get through whatever it is that you're learning to do. We'll do immersion days. Amazon has a process called working backwards that's famous. We'll do working backwards days with you. Super important. Our marketplace, you've probably, if you swing by our booth, you'll meet a lot of marketplace people, but marketplace, think of as like Amazon.com, but for AWS services. You can buy AWS partner services and SaaS applications through the marketplace. Your procurement people love it because they can write one check to Amazon, and you can buy services from all different places and just write one check. And then our partners are so important in that space, and our APN network is very important there. Em will talk to you a little bit about how that feels and looks from her perspective. I don't know if you want to do that now or if you want to wait.
I mean, I think it lends itself to nobody goes at this alone, right? We don't walk into any new deployment, any new journey alone. It's great to have multiple tools and multiple, you know, seats at the table, having those conversations to know if you make a mistake, it's okay. We're there as a team.
Yeah.
And we have solutions that complement each other. I think that's huge too.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So, and again, we'll talk about that some more in a couple more slides, but and most of our partners in our partner network have solutions with us that complement each other. And what's even more fun is when our partners have solutions that complement each other on AWS.
Right.
And you'll see a lot of that when you walk the exhibit floor here today. People that partner directly with Jamf. Jamf comes onto AWS. We're all one big happy partnership family, and it really is like a village getting things done. So it's really important. Some of the AWS core infrastructure, if you don't know it, is compute, networking, and storage. In compute, we have EC2, which is Elastic Cloud Compute. I don't know where the 2 came from. I'd have to look that up again to be sure. Might have been the second iteration of it. I'm not sure
That's what I'm thinking.
anymore. A couple of these other ones, Lightsail, ECS, and Lambda, again, are getting a little more advanced. Lambda, again, is one of these like serverless architecture things you can do. In the networking side, I'm a network engineer by training, so this falls near and dear to my heart, but VPCs are virtual private clouds. This is how we keep your data segregated from other customer data. And I'll make one thing very, very, very clear. I've had this conversation with a lot of people. We do not have access to data. So a lot of people say, oh, you're moving to the cloud. They can see all of our data. Not true. AWS can't see your data, doesn't want to see your data, has purposely built ourselves in a way that we don't look at customer data. So the VPCs are super important, and that's how we get that done. If you're drawing a network diagram, a VPC is the dotted line around which a firewall sits at either end, and you're walled off. We have site-to-site VPNs we can do. AWS Direct Connect is a really cool service that a lot of districts are taking advantage of now. They're building services. They've got partners in the AWS Cloud. So you build a Direct Connect. Think of it as just a direct internet connection, a ridiculously cheap price for these things compared to even an internet connection. But the idea being, once you start using AWS services, and my earlier statement saying that we've got about 85% of the ed techs on the market on AWS Cloud, plus your own data is in the cloud, suddenly you're flowing data over a direct connect within the AWS Cloud, and you're never stepping on the big I internet with that data. Increases your security level an order of magnitude by not traversing data over the internet. You're still going to have data encrypted at rest. You're still going to want to have it encrypted in transit, but at least you know that that man-in-the-middle piece where people are siphoning it off from the internet is kind of taken out. So a lot of people are looking at direct connects not just for latency purposes, but also for that extra layer of cybersecurity. Storage, EBS, Elastic Block Storage, is just what it sounds like. It's a place you can drop blocks of anything into. I think Netflix uses the heck out of this thing. A lot of stuff goes in there. S3 is our simple storage service, has all different kinds of tiers in there. S3 can go from like, I need access to my data all the time because my website runs on it, all the way down to Glacier, which is what I described earlier with my customer that's storing bus video, where it sits deep, deep, deep in the bottom of the ice bucket, and it might take me a while to fish down there and find that particular can of beer that's your favorite flavor. So that's really great there. And then storage gateways and FSX are again, getting a little more advanced, so we won't jump into those too much today. How schools are using the infrastructure today. SIS, ERP, LMS, and websites. These are actually areas that I focus on. I keep hitting my microphone. These are areas that I focus on. My team being small, we don't focus on a geographic space in the country. We pick areas of focus. And I've got a teammate who does data and analytics. But these core systems are ones that I focus on. These are obviously SIS, ERP, and LMS are almost always partner-driven. Think Canvas is built on AWS, Schoology is built on AWS, obviously Jamf is built on AWS, not in that category. We have several SIS partners that build in AWS, or I have some districts that will build their own environment and host their own SIS on there as well too. Critical things like storage and services around there are very important, and then security, meaning disaster recovery and resiliency, is kind of what I like to call the gateway drug of getting into these types of things, where we'll set up version of whatever it is, application or service that you want to live on forever. We'll put that in the cloud, and therefore when you have an outage of some sort, whether that's a ransomware attack or some sort of network outage, you flip on the switch that activates the pilot light, your services come up and run. Again, it's pay as you go, so when they're not in use, you're not spending a lot of money on it. Then you can run those things in the cloud. That's a really common use case in K-12 for these types of infrastructures. In the slides, I have several examples in here. One of them is the ESC Region 20. If anybody understands how ESAs work, Educational Service Agencies, they call them different things in different parts of the country. In Texas, they're regions. In New York, they're RICs and BOCES. In California, they're COEs. Pennsylvania, they're intermediate units. Everybody's got a name for one, but big important customer of ours in Region 20. They do a lot of infrastructure modernization, and they have done an application called Ascender that's a SIS ERP application, and they host Ascender in the AWS Cloud, but then their constituent districts can just access that. And we have a similar setup in New York. These things are all public, which is why I put them in here. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. From a security perspective, I do want to spend some time on this. This is how customers will build for cybersecurity. You know, you're responsible for 100% of everything, essentially. Customer data, platform, applications, physical security. I've built many of the data centers over the years, and you know, everything from ocular scanners to touch pads to thumbprint readers just to get into the space, and how do you secure the items once they're in there. I built one for a federal agency years ago that was multiple agencies underneath the umbrella of one big federal agency, and they didn't trust each other internally. You know, it's the government, you would never expect that. But the point is, this is what the infrastructure looks like when you're building it yourself. You're responsible for all of these things. So the result of that is kind of like, you got to choose to move fast, or you got to choose to stay secure, but the idea of doing both at the same time was nearly impossible. We've all heard the statement of like, you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, or you can have it good. Pick two, right? You don't get all three, right? And so the concept of building in the cloud is like, you can move fast and stay secure because we've got a process called the Shared Responsibility Model. And in that model, AWS is responsible for security of the cloud. The customer is responsible for security in the cloud. So I like to analyze this to people who aren't tech people of like, AWS will come and build you a really nice house. And in that house, we've got a brand new garage door opener with rolling codes. We've got a front door with a cipher lock on it. We've got windows with locks on those. You know, we've got cameras from Ring outside. We've got all the good things that you want. If you come home from work, throw your keys on the table and leave the door wide open and go out for a run, someone comes in and steals your laptop, sorry, that's on you, right? We've given you the structure to make it really, really safe, but you still are responsible for closing that lock, for not using all zeros as your combination, right? Like not leaving the garage door open when you're not home. So that's kind of the differentiator between security of the cloud and security in the cloud. Obviously, we can break that down into customer data platforms. You know, AWS maintains your software, compute storage, physical infrastructure. We don't even get to go. I've never been to an AWS data center. I've never seen one. Oh. I know roughly where they are, but I don't know exactly where they are. So they're very tight-lipped and very, very secure. Some of the security advantages then fall into inherent global practices, highest standards for security. We'll talk about those on the next slide. Again, the scalability and just the largest community of security providers anywhere are collected at AWS. It literally is job one. We talk about it every single day. It's super important to us to have high security standards. Amongst those standards are all these global standards, and this is just all I can fit on one slide. So think FISMA compliance if you're a federal person, HIPAA compliance if you're in the medical community, you know, FedRAMP, the ISO different things that are there. Lots of things. Most of these aren't super important to K-12, but one that everybody in K-12 talks about is FERPA, right? FERPA compliance is super important. Fun fact about FERPA, if you didn't know this.
Is there a fun fact about it?
There is one fun fact about FERPA.
Okay.
Nothing else about it's fun,
Nothing.
just the one. Jamf and AWS and any other partner you work with cannot violate FERPA. It's legally impossible for us to violate FERPA. Only a K-12 can violate FERPA, or an entity that handles student data that they're responsible for.
That is a good one.
It is a fun fact, right?
That is a fun fact.
Fun for us, not fun for K-12s. But in any case, FERPA is really important. SIPA is really important. If you think of any of the uhs that go with K-12, we kind of have you covered. And there's there's a process within AWS called Artifact. And Artifact is when your customer in AWS allows you to get in and see specifically how we meet the standard that it is that you need to meet on that particular day. And that's why that previous slide has so many standards on it. We do have a lot of security, identity, and compliance solutions as well. I won't read these, but we have identity and access management that's inherent into the AWS Cloud. Now, that's not to think about what like identity automation does, which is a new acquisition of Jamf's,
Right.
that does more of the provisioning of identity. This is identity and access management of AWS services that's kind of built in there, so kind of differentiate between those two. We've got a lot of detection and response tools in there. These are very strong. Amazon Guard Duty, Security Lake, Inspector, all these things are in there. Network protections are built in, data protections. And again, we just talked about compliance, and you saw all the standards we have on compliance in there. These are all super important. We could spend a whole 45-minute to an hour session just on this, no problem. Largest community of security partners that you can imagine, like I said earlier. This is just a quick listing of them that we work with. I work with a lot of these people every day. Checkpoint, Zscaler, Symantec, Jamf, of course, I lump into a security partner. Barracuda Networks, I'm thinking who else is in. Okta is big in there. Splunk is big in there. Sumo Logic is growing in K-12. So you can see a lot of these people are very relevant in the K-12 space, but they're relevant in the security space in general. And then just another example of Prince William County Schools, which is a big district in Maryland, and I used to be a CIO in Maryland, so I actually know these people really well. They had a challenge, a solution, and a benefit. All around security, they didn't have concerns about this, actually felt that it was an improvement. When I had to stand in front of my own school board and explain to them the difference between our security and cloud security, I analyzed it like, well, Charlotte-Mecklenburg spends about this much on cybersecurity every year, because you guys know it, you're the board, you fund it, right?
Right.
So Amazon's spending this much, you know, like we can't even come close to the level of security that you would get from a cloud provider. Now again, back to the shared responsibility model, you still have to do the work yourself, and you still need security professionals, and you still need networking professionals who know what they're doing. One of the big fears a lot of districts will have will be like, well, if I go to the cloud, I'm gonna have to shed people, you know. We don't like to shed people in K-12, so no, you don't have to shed people, just people have to do their job in the cloud as opposed to walking into a freezing cold data center and doing it there. And then we talked a little bit about this already, disaster recovery solutions, really important here. I like to, again, you heard me equate this to a pilot light a little bit, like we like to build solutions in the cloud, have a pilot light running so we can bring them up online. AWS Backup is in there, AWS Elastic Disaster Recovery is in there. All of this is built on S3 storage and other products we have in there. But then we have this whole list of partners who help you do these things too. Not to confuse disaster recovery with backup, like two different products, right? Two different things we're thinking about. Disaster recovery is coming back after some incident. Backup could be, well, gosh, I deleted this file, can you get it back for me? So keep those things differentiated in your head as you're thinking about cloud, just like you would when you're on-prem. Again, a lot of solutions here, a lot of technical diagrams. I don't want to go and read them to you, but the big thing is the worm compliance storage. That helps you build things against ransomware attacks, for instance, right? I can do consistent snapshots, points in times with worm, can't be overridden, can't be compromised in any way, shape, or form, and you can always recover back to that. I actually partnered with a couple of different partners, and we built a ransomware mitigation kit that could actually automate the recovery from a ransomware incident. You told it the point in time you wanted to automate to, and it would go back and restore to that point. Everything comes back the way it used to be. Most of the humans still want to push the button at some point, but it's, you know, it's a thing. And again, some of our partners in here that I lump into this space, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, everybody knows them. Jamf, obviously we know them. Trend Micro is still in there. Sophos is another big one. Tanium does a lot of work in K-12, and they're amazing. By the way, these guys are all in the AWS Marketplace, and I can, you know, again, one check, multiple products,
Yep.
right? So really cool. And then another user, a big user of those is Loudoun County Public Schools, which is a large district right outside of DC in the Virginia area. And we do a ton of this kind of work with them. And Loudoun's a really unique district in that they are builders. They build their own AWS environment. They host their own sys in it. They like to do that kind of stuff in there as well too. I'm going to gloss over data and analytics a little bit because we talked about that some already, and this group probably isn't super heavy into that. With the exception of again, the analytics we talked about earlier in the session where we are looking at analytics on device usage, device outages, like all the different things in there.
I think it's just good to know that the analytics are available.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can find them.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, high-level diagrams on how it works, data warehousing dashboards. Actually, I have a whole team in Texas this week at the EdFi Alliance conference. If you're familiar with EdFi, they're an organization that was Gates Foundation funded to start standards in educational data sources. We'll skip over that one. And with that, I'm going to hand the conch shell off to Emily and let you talk a little bit about why Jamf Cloud.
So that's the second time I've heard you say conch shell today. I've never heard that before.
Have you not seen Piggy and the conch shell?
I haven't.
Oh, we're gonna.
I need to. Okay.
I'll read the starfish and.
All right, you read the starfish. I'll piggy in the. Okay, I'm not going to read my slide either. So, but I'm going to tell you some things. It's just really, I mean, AWS does sound like it is definitely the gold standard. We obviously trust you here at Jamf because we build in you, right? And you spoke to my teacher and my administrative heart as you were going through saving money.
I often forget that you're.
Yeah, you talked about saving money. You only pay for what you use, resiliency.
Yep.
You're keeping kids safe.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, it's going to work when you need it to work, right? That's kind of what you touched on.
A little bit.
So love to hear that. Jamf Cloud and districts, one of the stats that you gave me was our IT departments are able to reclaim about 15 to 20 hours a week, maybe every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's invaluable time. That's somebody's hourly time given back to them when you're using AWS and freeing up that on-prem struggle, right? So love that. Next we have, this sounds great, but it's October. What do I do now?
Yeah.
What can they do? Can you start AWS tomorrow?
Anytime you want.
Anytime you want, but we're not going to do it alone.
Yeah.
It's great to have an entire team here. It's great to have everybody attending JNUC have access to the great AWS team. Some of the other stats with, zero disruption when there's updates. That's great. I mean, if I'm a classroom teacher, I've got devices, either my teaching device, a student device, and something goes down, it's an immediate uptick.
Not to mention the chaos that happens in your classroom.
That never happens. I don't know if I mentioned I was a middle school principal.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So the second that device went down, there was an upheaval. So it's just great to know that the support that comes with the AWS experience, and to know that with Jamf Pro and AWS, you get that on time, in time, safe, secure, inexpensive.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say inexpensive. There's a cost with it, but it's
everything.
Yeah, there's a cost for everything. But like you said, you've had over 100 price decreases over 18 years.
Yeah.
And that's great. I mean, you're really looking for the value. You're really trying to bring value to the customer, which I think is what we're all looking for in education.
Yeah.
And I love writing checks to Amazon.
My family does, that's for sure anyway. So.
Yeah. So with that, I think we are done
Yeah.
with our content. Are there any questions?
Just one thing I want to add in real quick, that you all heard me talk about all these security standards and all these things we're doing. So when Jamf Pro is built on AWS, and all the things I said are available to you, by the way, those are all available to them as they build. And then on top of that, with partners specifically, and any customer can do this, but partners specifically, it's automatic. AWS has a thing called a well-architected review. And once the solution is prepared and ready to go, a well-architected review happens over top of that to ensure that the best practices in that industry are being applied, whether that's from a cost effectiveness or cybersecurity or delivery.
Well, and I love that you brought that up, because being able to create a solution that is for the individual entity is huge.
Yes.
Because whether you're in Texas, which I love you shouted that out a couple of times, or in DC or Hawaii or in Asia, you've got to build something that works for you.
Yes.
So I love that.
Yeah. Okay, sorry to interrupt you. Any questions from anybody? Happy to take them. We got a few minutes left, and I know nobody's going to be upset about going to happy hour early, but if there's any questions I can answer either now or after, please let us know.
I will say my one last note on my slide I didn't read is the AWS team has a booth. They are on the expo hall floor, as are we. fully available to answer any and all
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, and my team there has, you heard me talk about Marketplace. I've got Marketplace people there. I've got Amazon Business people there, which are another great resource for buying things from Amazon. So yeah, the team is well stocked up there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if no other questions, I'll thank you all for your time and have a great rest of the event.
And we'll see you tonight.
Yeah, happy hour.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.